all, but aligned with the Republic as GB continues to diverge and making the difference of the greater. So no one should be under any misapprehension as to the compelling significance of the fact that Northern Ireland is still subject to and will be subject to prevailing EU laws. And the constitutional significance of that is immense, because it takes you back to where I started. What defines a country? The fact that you're ruled by laws you make yourself. And that was, of course, the origins of our Acts of Union. Our union was two things. It was a political union and an economic union, both created by the Acts of Union of 1800. The political union, one parliament, making laws for one kingdom, was created by Article 3 of the Acts of Union. One economic union, free and unfettered trade between and within all parts of the United Kingdom, created by Article 6 of the Acts of Union. And now, of course, because that huge chunk of law that governs our economy has been removed and is now the EU law, Supreme Court, surprise, surprise, said, well, if that's the situation, then Article 6 that guaranteed you the same laws, the same economic rights, the same free trade, and it's in suspension. And it's suspended by the protocol, because the protocol is deemed to be superior to the Acts of Union and to any British law. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what the DUP has now signed up to, without one word of the protocol being changed. That is now what they're implementing. And Jeffrey Donaldson stood on platform after platform with me and berated, as I did, the outrageous thought that we should be ruled by laws we don't make and can't change. Railed against the fact that Article 6 was in suspension. And tonight, the same Jeffrey Donaldson is now implementing the protocol unchanged that did all of that. So no one should be under any doubt as to the constitutional significance of all of that. That's why I began by saying to you, the union as we've known it is over. Thanks to the protocol, and now thanks to the DUP. And I've only dealt yet with one half of it. The other significant part of what it denotes a union is not just the fact that you're governed by the same law, by laws you make yourself within your own territory of that union, but the fact that you also have an international common border which denotes your territory and which doubles up as a customs border. And that has been the other assault of the protocol upon our position in the United Kingdom. Because tonight we're in a position, whereas historically, legally, correctly, the international border was the border that skirted round Armagh and up to right up around the border. Tonight, and that was our customs border. Tonight, the customs border is in the Irish Sea. And the fact is this: the iniquitous protocol, ladies and gentlemen, succeeded and achieved where the IRA failed. Now just think about that for a moment. The IRA bombed and butchered in this province for decades. To do what? To get rid of the border. To push the border to the Irish Sea. To partition the United Kingdom. To create an all-Ireland entity. That is precisely what the protocol has done. It has pushed the customs border to the Irish Sea, partitioning the United Kingdom, leaving us aligned with the Irish Republic under the same economic laws I've been describing to you, and with customs and checks. Where? When you bring goods from what's supposed to be the same kingdom into another part of it. That's why I say to you, the union as we know it is over. And it's over because of the treacherous sellout of those who have accepted that situation. And I don't think I overstate the case when I say to you that that is the sorry position we're now in tonight. The union has been recast, remoulded as something different. Not a union of one parliament making the laws itself or by devolved parliaments for its own people. Not a union with an international customs border common to all, but a union now where that part called Northern Ireland lives under partial foreign regime of the EU in terms of its laws, and where, to manifest it and indicate it beyond doubt, there is now a border partitioning us from GB. That is the recasting of the union. And that is the recasting of the union that tragically the DUP has now endorsed. And if that situation continues, then there's only one end destination for that. And I think it's pretty clear what the intended destination of the protocol is. It is undoubtedly through the economic fusion of the island of Ireland to create the political fusion of the island of Ireland. It is a relatively short step from economic unity to political unity. And that's the evil genius of the protocol. Put Northern Ireland under the same economic laws as the Irish Republic, make its trade with its main partner GB difficult, force business to reorientate onto a north-south basis, build the all-Ireland economy, and you build the stepping stone to Irish unity. That's exactly what's unfolded. And that's exactly what Sinn Féin this week have been rubbing our noses in. You know, we got Stormont back, and what was the first thing the DUP did? Well, apart from enthroning Michelle O'Neill as First Minister, first thing they did was surrender all the key economic portfolios. The economy, finance, infrastructure, all handed to Sinn Féin. And they haven't been wasting their time. You saw it today. Finance Minister has the Republic's Minister up, standing in the Great Hall of Stormont, telling us about the wonderful largesse that they're going to meddle with in Northern Ireland. Yesterday in the Assembly, we had Murphy, that's convicted IRA man Murphy, Minister of the Economy, exulting in the all-island economy. There wasn't a whimper from the DUP. Not a whimper of protest. It was left to my wife's husband to tell him what he could do with his all-island economy. That's because the DUP has bought into it, tragically and sadly. And of course they told us, oh, but there's going to be law that prohibits any obligation on a minister to promote the all-island economy. Didn't sound like it yesterday in the Assembly. Doesn't sound like it today when you've the Irish government throwing their weight about and their money about in respect of Northern Ireland. I got an answer yesterday, a written answer from the Economy Minister. I asked You never really ask a question, or you shouldn't unless you know the answer to it. But I asked, would he please list from Annex 2 of the protocol that I've been talking to you about all the laws that apply to his department, the economy. And he had to do it. They come to 86. 86 laws that govern how our economy is shaped. We don't make, that we can't change, that are imposed. And of course, the most significant one of them is the one that subjects us to the EU's customs code. What is that? Well, because the EU doesn't have internal borders, it only has an external border. And within its borders, then all its goods can move freely. Because of that situation, it has what is called a customs code, which governs its external borders. And one of those 86 laws is one that applies that customs code to Northern Ireland. Yes, an integral part of the United Kingdom is now subject to the EU's external customs code. What does that mean? Well, it means exactly what the customs code says. And the customs code, under the law of the customs code, GB is a foreign country. Think about that. GB, under EU law, that we now live under, is decreed to be, in terms of trade, a foreign country. And therefore, when you bring goods from a foreign country, be it Bolivia or be it Britain, and you're bringing them into the EU and we're decreed to be the territory of the EU, then you must subject them to checks and tariffs and all the things that manifest themselves at the Irish Sea border. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the reality of our legal position tonight. We are deemed under EU law to be EU territory. Someone, just before I come out tonight, sent me out a WhatsApp message of a package they received today from Germany. There's a sticker on it. It says, Northern Ireland economically is part of the EU, geographically it's part of the United Kingdom, but because economically it's part of the EU, there are no customs declarations required from Germany. Why? Because we're EU territory. But the same package coming from Britain would require customs declaration. Now, didn't Sir Geoffrey tell us, oh, now zero checks, zero paperwork, zero truth, ladies and gentlemen? Because even today, in the House of Commons, the Cabinet Office staff conceded to the Northern Ireland Committee that the EU's basic stipulation of a minimum of 5% checks on the green lane, which still exists. Yes, they've given it another name, but it still exists. The 5% minimum quantity of checks will have to continue. So much for zero checks. And we're in this ludicrous situation where to trade in the green lane, you have to belong to trade in your own country, to a trusted trader scheme. If you're bringing stuff in, you can only bring it in if you've applied to, paid to, been a member of a trusted trader scheme. You still must, with that, make all sorts of customs declarations as to what it is you're bringing. And of course, the red lane, which is there for anything which is at any risk, and the presumption of risk is always there, anything that might ever end up in the Republic must pass through the red lane with full EU tariffs, full EU checks, full EU paperwork. And through that red lane comes all the raw materials for our manufacturing industry. You have a big manufacturing industry in Mid-Ulster. All the raw materials for it that come from GB will pass through that red lane. All of it. Because you can't ultimately say where our raw material, when it's processed and manufactured, will ultimately end up. Therefore, it's in the red lane. Again, I underscore the point. A border partitioning the United Kingdom, achieving what the IRA couldn't achieve, pushing the border to the Irish Sea. And that means, that's why I said to you at the start of this meeting, the union as we know it is over. Because we have now been subject to being a colony of the EU. When I first studied constitutional law decades ago at Queen's University, I learned about a concept I never thought I'd live under it. It's called condominium. What does that mean? Well, it's not a block of flats. In constitutional terms, a condominium is a territory which is governed by more than one government. And that's exactly what Northern Ireland is tonight. We're a condominium ruled in part by UK laws and in part by EU foreign laws. And it's worse than that, because that part we can never change. And that is, in constitutional terms, a condominium. You cannot be a condominium and be an integral part of the United Kingdom. The two are mutually exclusive. That's where we have ended up. And we've ended up there, of course, because of the iniquitous protocol. But we now have it enforced and confirmed by the lead party of unionism, who for all their 7 tests, none of them are met. They didn't mean anything on the paper they were written. For all those, they've now signed up to all of that. And that leaves you, me, and unionism in a very dire position. And if that prevails, ladies and gentlemen, then this union well and truly is over. If I can't be anything else in politics, I'll be honest with you. And those who continue to vote for and to support the parties that have given you that, then you're voting for the end product. And the end product's pretty clear. So the challenge is to us all as to whether or not we're going to stand or roll over. The example set by the biggest unionist party is to roll over. And maybe that's ultimately what unionism will do. But I'm going to look my grandchildren in the eye and be able to say, I stood out against it. I tried to do the right thing. That win or lose, that is the attitude we need to take. And before this year is out, there will be a general election. And I hope we'll be in a position to offer every unionist in this province the opportunity to have their say, to vote against what has been put upon us. At the end of the day, there's not much difference between a protocol implementer, no matter what party flag he flies. He or she is also a union dismantler. And that's the position we're arrived at in this province. So I don't bring you a cheery message, but I trust I bring you a straight and honest message. And one which this party on its own can never undo. But we can certainly be the voice crying in the wilderness, and remember, he was right. And it's up to us to try and garner more and more support. Now, there are people in the DUP who don't agree with this. They need to do more than disagree. And some of them have spoken very well in the House of Lords, in the House of Commons, and that's good. I encourage that. But we need to put principle above party loyalty in this situation. If that isn't done, then we're going to continue to slide entirely in the wrong direction. As you know, Stormond's back, and it feels very much like it did when I first went there in 2011. Bit of a lone voice. Yes, I know there's a few people in the DUP benches, and you can even tell by their body language, they're far from happy. They need to show it. And you know, when I watch and see the exultation among Sinn Féin, they think that this thing won. They really do. And maybe well might they, when they consider they have captured all the economic portfolios. And now they're going to have built Casement Park to further exult in. They're going to have whatever roads they require. And the DUP sit silently, having put in place the very people. The first day the Assembly sat, they appointed the First Minister, Michelle O'Neill. I took some pleasure, and I was the only one willing to do it, to call her out for what she is. The lady who tells us there was no alternative to the murder of your kith and kin. There are plenty of those murders around Mid-Ulster. No alternative. That means it was the right thing to do. Let's not put a tooth in it. That's what there was no alternative to means. It was the right and necessary thing to do. The anniversary on Saturday of the Le Mans bombing. 12 people incinerated by a fireball. Went right through that hotel. Members of a dog collie club. There was no alternative, according to our First Minister. No alternative to murder and mayhem and bombing and all that went with it for years. And I recited all that to the Assembly. And I recited the case from my own constituency. A young mother, Yvonne Dunlop, burnt to death in the shop where she worked because McAwee, one of those wicked hunger strikers, planted a fireball and burnt her to death. McAwee is someone who every year Michelle O'Neill celebrates as a freedom fighter. Having recited that, I looked up at Jeffrey Donaldson sitting in the gallery, and I eyeballed him and I said, "Well done, Jeffrey." Because that's what he gave us. A woman who this year will celebrate McAwee as First Minister. She will never be my First Minister, ladies and gentlemen. There she is, propped up by her unelected lady in waiting, Emma Pengelly. It really makes me sick when I have to sit and watch and listen and Mr. Seismic has to try and keep me in order. I got a letter from him today rebuking me for something I had said in the assembly. There's a certain alliance member, a gentleman from Upper Bann, who tried to interrupt me yesterday when I was speaking in the budget debate. And in words that he understood and his party understood, I said, no, it's all right, you just stick to your videos. I didn't take his intervention. Anyone who knows the story of Mr. Tennyson will know what I was referring to. They didn't like it, and they rose up and they protested to the speaker that I used unparliamentary language, so there's nothing unparliamentary about saying you just stick to your videos. I assure you, but I got a letter today from Mr. Speaker telling me I needed to be careful and use proper language. But I'll just stick it on my notice board to join the ones that Willie Hay used to send me. He always had a famous way of trying to do it. I wouldn't go there, but I often did. But there we are, ladies and gentlemen. We're not in a happy scene. I want to be frank and honest with you, and to make it very, very plain that we've arrived in large measure at this spot because of the betrayal of our own. I look across the benches, I see Keith Buchanan, and I just wonder to myself, what on earth is going through your head that you think this is the right thing to do? Yet he does. I don't expect anything better from the Shinners. I expect them to promote at every opportunity the All Ireland agenda. But I did expect better of some others, and I haven't seen it. There we are. I'll take a few questions.